It's a pleasure to come and have a conversation with IDF as and when I get that opportunity. To your question, I think where we are is we're a very nascent organization when it comes to diversity. We've started our journey, though Mercer, which is part of MMC in India, it has had a long history of working on diversity, and they are a step ahead from the entire organization. In Marsh McLennan, overall, with all the entities in India, we started this journey around 3 years ago, and in 3 years, not only have we been able to convince our leadership to work on diversity, have a diversity agenda, have the commitment of our leaders on diversity, we've gone ahead and even got some business results from the work that we've done. Primarily, there are four areas of work that we do. One is on gender inclusion. The second is on inclusion of people with disability. The third is inclusion of the LGBTQI group, colleagues who belong to that group. And lastly, and very unique for us, is developing a multi-generation organization. So these are four areas that we're working, and in all of these four areas, we've experienced some very good results in terms of the way our diversity numbers have grown, the kind of inclusion that we see coming very organically in the organization, how colleagues are inviting people from different diversity groups and ensuring that they feel included. There's a helping hand everywhere. It's kind of naturally growing in the organization. We've done a lot of sensitization for managers. We've done a lot of sensitization for colleagues. There's a long way still to go ahead and get real business results in terms of numbers that we can be proud of talking about. But I think, when I walk around in the organization, I'm very, very delighted with the way I see people interact with people from diversity groups and how easily they are able to find space in the organization. Okay, the most difficult part, I think, at every stage of evolution, there will be a difficult part. So when we started off, I think, the bigger challenge that we had was how do we convince every leader to agree that diversity has an important role to play in the organization. So, having use cases, having stories which are impactful, powerful, and which kind of build a business case for diversity was something that we did a lot of it was done by the fact that Marsh McLennan globally has a very strong diversity culture. So that kind of influenced the leaders to start taking positive steps in India as well. Once we started working on diversity, and we had this entire energy around different groups of people working on different areas of diversity, the other challenge we started seeing was how do we bring the entire organization together on diversity? How do we sensitize people? How do we start communicating that ethos of diversity, what we want to do around diversity? So that communication, that sensitization became a bigger challenge. Right now, at the phase that we are, while there is leadership commitment, while there is employee enthusiasm around diversity, a big challenge is how do we bring all of these threads together so that we can talk as one single story for India, right? So I think at every stage of evolution, there will be a challenge. The beauty is that there are so many people who are supporting you on DEI that it just goes on, right? You don't have to really think about it from a big struggle. The other piece, which I feel in every part of the organization, right? Budgets are something that everybody deals with all the time. But in DEI, I don't think, while budgets are always a concern, right, for every organization in every area of work that you do. In DEI, we found some very interesting ways of utilizing limited budget, and it's a very, I wouldn't say it's a voluntary piece of work that we're doing. It's a business intent that we're working on, and we've looked at ways of ensuring that budgets never become a hassle or a hurdle in implementing anything in DI. So that's the beauty of working on this initiative. So DEI goals, I think, as I said, we're a very recent organization in this area. We don't have very large goals, but few of the goals that we definitely have is one is colleague sensitization around what is diversity, what do we mean by diversity when we talk of diversity in Marsh McLennan in India. The second goal is how sensitized are people around themes of diversity, whether it is unconscious bias, whether it is allyship, whether it is leading with inclusion. How do people really understand these things and how are they putting it in action? That's the second goal. The third goal for us is how do we enable talent acquisition to look at DEI as an important key area for recruitment teams. So that's another. And the fourth for us is definitely how is our colleagues from diversity groups, how are they experiencing the organization? It's very easy to track the first two, which is more around sensitization and the goals and things like that. So every time, you just have to go to your learning dashboard and you can see how many people have attended courses and all of that. But the more important piece is around, well, if I've understood allyship, have I raised my hand to become an ally? So that's a number that we'd like to track to say how many allies do we have in the organization, how many allies are actively working as allies, right? And very visible way of tracking it is everybody who's part of, for example, an LGBTQ activity, right? Who's ally for LGBTQ, we give them a different colored lanyard, which is a pride colored lanyard. You just have to see how many lanyards are differently colored, right? It's so visible as a result. We don't have to really go start tracking numbers at all times. There are simple things that we'd like to do for people to feel included, for people to feel that, yes, they are special and they're adding value to the organization. So that's around sensitization. Around recruitment, we've had quite a great partnership with our talent acquisition team where the talent acquisition team is we supporting them in identifying recruiters who specialize in certain diversity groups and how can we start working with diversity groups. So how we would track our success would be number of people from diversity groups that we've hired. And not only hired, a bigger measure is how many of them have we been able to retain for a period of 6 months or more, right? Having people on board is easy, keeping them on board is difficult. And that's where we track our success, not about just recruiting, but ensuring that we have at least the early career retention happens. So that's our first measure as of now. We'll go ahead in a few years and maybe change those measures. But that's our first measure. And lastly, about the experiences that colleagues have, what we do is we have a 30, 60, 90-day check-in with all new colleagues. And that is one of the good measure of saying how engaged are people in the organization. And for diversity groups, we like our CRG members to have those conversations, get a pulse of people who've joined from different diversity groups. How are they experiencing? What is the feedback that we're getting from them? How are we acting on that feedback? How are we enabling everyone? One of the things that we did in the organization after hearing a lot of pulse was we did a real estate and a facility audit in the organization to say how convenient is the organization to navigate. So very simple things like, is the door can the door be easily opened by a person who's on a wheelchair? Right. So that those are very simple audits that we're doing to say that are we ready to invite people in the organization? While we've invited few of them, are we making it easy for them? So yeah, these small measures are really helping us see where we're going. What would I tell them? Is go adopt DI as a policy, definitely. But I think, let's get to business. Let's see, let's explore why businesses would not adopt DEI as a policy, right? It's a very logical policy. And most of the times, I think all organizations have adopted DEI in some way or the other, whether we recognize it or not. Most organizations today are talking about gender diversity in their workplaces, saying how many women do we have, how many men workers do we have. There are organizations. The government of India has put in certain rules to say that you have to have a specific number of women on your board, right? And those are being done with a certain perspective in mind, because everyone is seeing some value by the fact that there is diversity in your organization. You are able to do a lot of other things. Things like, the other day we were talking in one of our IDF catch-ups, we were talking to a co-leader in DEI. And she said the fact that women are taking larger accountabilities is changing the culture of the organization, where there is less of fence sitters, there are more participants in the organization. It is enabling better productivity in the organization. It's acting to, and adding up to the success of the organization. That's one. Secondly, when you see managerial levels, the kind of managerial empathy that comes in when you have more women managers is a little more than what you see otherwise. The understanding of the pains of employees and colleagues is much higher when you have women colleagues coming in and participating in managerial effectiveness. At boardrooms, you see better decision making happening because women are there and participating there. Your brand takes up a higher recall value when you have a very diverse group of people sitting at the board and taking decisions. There is that brand impact, there is a productivity impact. So if there are so many positives of having a more diverse organization, why would organizations not want to go there? And by not being diverse, or by not having a policy for diversity in the organization, we are knowingly or unknowingly making a large section of our talent unemployable for ourselves. We're missing out over there. So if we want to, in a very tight talent market that we have today, we have a talent market where Gen X's are joining in. And I think the education that Gen X have got is very different from what we got when we were in school. Today, they're more questioning about why organizations would not do things which are so logical, right? And if we want to make our organization ready for the future generations, I think as an organization, we have to start putting in policies and processes which are more inviting, which are more like them, and move away from what we believed was right, right? And I think diversity just adds to everything. There is no reason why we shouldn't have a policy on diversity. Take small steps, take very, very small steps, but take positive steps. If you don't recognize that you are diverse, start talking about your own diversity. That itself will make an organization diverse. We don't have to do any large, changes in the organization to become diverse organizations. Very small positive messages are only going to make your organization diverse. So don't fear from taking those steps and just go ahead.